As if this rivalry needed any extra juice, you got Will Harris, the DB coach at Florida, pivoting to be the DB coach now at Miami after one season in Gainesville. So there's a lot to unpack with this. I want us to first unpack this from the Florida side, and then I want us to unpack this from the Miami side. Spoiler alert when it comes to this segment, I think the storyline is a little bit more juicy than maybe what actually the reality is when it comes to the impact of this whole thing. If you're a Florida fan, if you're a Miami fan, make sure you are subscribed. Talk a lot about your Canes, talk a lot about your Gators. So we appreciate you being dialed in and appreciate you just being a part of this college football sicko community. So let's start with the Florida side. I think your perception of this as a Florida fan is essentially a self-fulfilling prophecy with whatever you thought about Billy Napier going into this whole situation. Like if you thought that Billy Napier wasn't all that great of a coach and you weren't sold on him and you kind of thought the end of last year was a little bit smoke and mirrors, a little bit fugazi, if you will, then like you're looking at this and saying, man, pathetic. Guy can't keep a staff together. Hey, look, there's internal strife going on. This is why he's leaving. There's problems in the building in Gainesville, and Will Harris sniffs it out, and he's out of there. If you thought that, things that finished at the end of last year were tangible and real and something that you can count on here going forward, like you say, okay, hey, no loyalty from the guy Will Harris, man. You don't do that. You don't go from one rival to the other. It's just not about that. This guy's a rat. Let him leave. Doesn't matter. Like, honestly, if you think that On3 hates your team, think that On3 sucks with their rankings and they're biased with their rankings, one, I'd say you're wrong. But two, it's the same logic you have around this situation. On3 hates us, therefore that's why the guy that we have committed is lower ranked in their rankings. Like, no, it's not actually how it works, but I digress. Speaking of recruiting, I think that's the biggest loss here for Florida. Like, I think defensively, Florida is going to be, I would have to estimate as we sit here in February, not horrible shape. Will Harris is a great DB coach. There's no way around that. But the big impact here is what Will Harris brought in helping put together Florida's top 10 class. That's the big loss here. What I would say in addition to that is if you're Florida, if you win, call it 9 games, 10 games next season, it doesn't mean that losing Will Harris was no big deal in the recruiting trail, but it does mean that you probably are able to mitigate that a good amount because the product at that point in time and the logo should speak for itself when it comes to the trajectory of what Florida is overall. Now, why did he leave? That's the question we're all asking as of this morning at, call it what, for all our friends on Eastern time zone. It is 10:20 a.m. Eastern time on Valentine's Day. As of right now, there is nothing definitive that I have heard as to why he left. And that goes back to what I said at the top of this segment. My feeling here, again, just a feeling, can't prove this, we're speculating. My feeling is the storyline of a DB coach hitting the coaching portal from one rival to the other after one season, it's probably more juicy than what actually is going on here. Like if you did some background here on Will Harris and Mario Cristobal, this is a dude that Mario Cristobal has been trying to get on his staff since Mario Cristobal was at Oregon and Will Harris was at Washington. So does it feel good if you're Mario Cristobal to snag a guy from your rival? I'm sure it does. But I think in large part here, this is more so a situation where there's been some moves on Florida's defensive staff. This is a situation where a head coach has been very persistent trying to land a Will Harris, and it seems like persistence at this point in time paid. Will Harris is not a Florida alum. He went to USC. He's not from the state of Florida. He's from the state of California. Like there's not some massive allegiance here. There's no Benedict Arnold kind of move here from a Will Harris. From what I can gather, this is just a coach that is deciding to go with a guy that's been after him for, feels like, quite some time. Now, the impact, in large part, in the most immediate sense, could be felt in this post-spring transfer portal. You wonder a little bit, hey, I'm not saying I know anything. I'm just speculating and asking the question that I think we need to ask in modern college football. If the coach that recruited me to Florida is no longer there, does that change my decision to stay at a school like Florida? Now, my feel on this is it's spring practice, so maybe you get into spring practice and you have a good experience and you say, I don't really want to do the whole portal thing. I'm going to stay at Florida and I don't really want to touch that. I don't know, but that's the question I'd be asking today if I'm a Florida fan. That's what I would be thinking about as we try to weigh the immediate impact of great recruiter and Will Harris now pivoting away to the other school in state, which is, of course, Miami. And if you're Miami, this feels a lot more straightforward. There's nothing but good vibes. Any way you slice it. Like the weather's already amazing in Coral Gables, as it is in Gainesville year-round, but you just add this on to what your Friday is, your Friday morning on Valentine's Day, a little extra pep in your step. whether you have a boo thing or not on Valentine's Day. Like, you got a great recruiter, you got him from your rival, got a great secondary coach, and add him to a secondary that, let's call a spade here, needs a lot of help as they move into 2025 because they were abysmal in 2024 as a defense. The impact for me in a broader sense is just what I said about Florida is the same thing that's true about Miami. Like, you have a guy now that is going to, I think, help you level up when it comes to your efforts on the recruiting trail. Like, Mario Cristobal was always going to major in recruiting. But the reason why this maybe hits a little bit different for you today if you're a Canes fan is you had a really good year last year relative to Mario Cristobal's time in Coral Gables. His best season so far. And didn't finish with the top 10 class. Had your best class in the ACC, but it's just Miami won the state last year, had their best year under Cristobal. Like I just said, they won double-digit ball games, but nobody seems to really be acting that way in regards to like the perception of what Miami is. Now, some of that's the defense. I think some of that is Cam Ward leaving to the NFL. I totally get all that. But this is still a brand now that, based on what they've done on the field, is continuing to ramp it up. Now you land a guy like a Will Harris, who I think will help you maximize on all that momentum on the recruiting trail and help it pay dividends for you there. So to close here, good for Miami. The sky is not falling at Florida. If we get more information on this as to why Will Harris left from Florida to Miami after one season, we'll of course have a conversation about it. One thing is for certain, this is pouring some gasoline on the rivalry that already has a lot of juice in Florida and Miami when they get after it here this upcoming season. Let me know your thoughts, though. Get after us in the comments section. Get at us on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, at JD PicKell. Make sure you're subscribed. For Cato on the ones and twos, for myself, JD PicKell, we will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.